If you've ever had feedback on your PhD writing that said something like, this needs to be more critical, or this is still too descriptive, and you've thought, what does that even mean? This video's for you. Be more critical is one of the most common pieces of PhD feedback, but unfortunately, it's also one of the least well explained. In this video, I want to break that down in a way that actually helps. Here's what we'll be looking at. What critical really means in a PhD, the core components of criticality using what I call the criticality ladder, and how you apply that thinking across different chapters of your thesis. Let's get into it. Let's start by clearing up a big misunderstanding. Being critical does not mean being negative or tearing other researchers' work apart or being aggressive or combative. Critical thinking in a PhD means making reasoned judgments about ideas, evidence and choices and explaining why those judgments make sense. So instead of just showing that you've engaged with something, you're showing how it relates to your research, how useful it is, where its limits are, and how it connects to other ideas in the field. Being critical means thinking with the material, not just reporting it. One of the most helpful ways to think about critical analysis is this. Criticality is not a switch you flip, it's the ladder you climb. Most PhD writing problems happen because people get stuck on the lower rungs of the ladder. Not because they're incapable of the higher level critical thinking, but because nobody ever teaches us how to do this stuff. So here's that ladder in simple terms. Firstly, describe. So what does this say? Secondly, interpret. What does this mean for my research? What are the implications of it? Next up, evaluate. So make a judgment about its value. How strong, useful or limited is it and why? Next, synthesise. So how does this connect to other work? And lastly, position. Where do I stand and what does my research contribute? All five matter, and most people are great on the bottom rung of that ladder. They're brilliant at reporting what it is that's going on. But description on its own is never enough. If you're finding this video helpful, I am really pleased about that, and so is Patrick the cat, who is just down here. But I've just got a quick question to ask you. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? If not, take a moment to go and do that now. Because if you're subscribed, and if you hit the notification bell as well, my videos are going to come to you, which is going to save you scrambling around looking for them when you need them. So take a moment to go and do that now. Back to the video. Let's actually start climbing that ladder in chapters of your thesis right now. Let's begin applying it, and we'll start with the introduction chapter. People often assume that the introduction chapter is just about setting the scene, but actually this is where the criticality begins. And here's what the ladder can look like in practice in that chapter. Firstly, describe. You outline the topic, the context, the problem. So you're answering the question, what is this about? And you might say things like recent research has focused on, this thesis examines. And all of this is necessary, but it's only the starting point. Next, when we interpret, we explain why this matters. This is significant because in this context, it's important to conduct this research because. After that, we evaluate. So here we start making gentle judgments. Now, at introduction level, evaluation is not about picking apart individual studies. It's more about making reasoned judgments about the state of the field and the shape of the problem. So here, you might write things like this. Despite growing interest in this area, existing research has tended to focus on, or while this body of work has generated valuable insights, it has paid less attention to. So you're signalling the limits in the field. You're not critiquing papers line by line here. When we synthesize in the introduction, we're connecting ideas. Synthesis in the introduction chapter works at a higher, wider level than it does in the literature review. So here you draw together the broad themes or the directions of travel. And an important thing to remember here is that often you will write your introduction chapter as one of the last things that you do. Okay, you will write it after you've completed your literature review. So by the time you get to writing your introduction chapter, you will be familiar with these things. You're not expected to know this up front. Okay, so just bear that in mind. So in this chapter, when it's written up, you might write things like, taken together, existing research suggests a growing concern with. And this helps the reader see the landscape your research is entering and why your study belongs there. And then finally, position. So you are locating your study. You might write things like, this thesis adopts the position that, or building on X but departing from Y. And this is where your introduction becomes unmistakably doctoral. And again, because we often write the introduction as one of the last things we do in the PhD process, you are going to know this material really, really well by the time you get there. So you will be at a stage where you can write about your positioning. Before we move on, I would love to hear from you in the comments. I want to know which rung of this criticality ladder is the most challenging one for you. Describe, interpret, evaluate, synthesize, position. Which one is giving you the biggest headache? Also, if you're a seasoned PhD researcher and you're watching this video and you've learned some handy hints and tips and tricks to get better at critical analysis, I want to hear from you too in the comments down there. Your knowledge could be so helpful to someone else right now. Someone who's stuck on something you were once stuck on. So let's get sharing down there. Now, let's get on to how to be critical in the other chapters of your thesis. First up, the literature review. And this is the one where people most commonly get stuck in description. Being critical in the literature review is about much more than just saying what other authors are arguing. It's about evaluating how useful their contributions are for your research and synthesizing across the studies to show the patterns and the gaps and the debates. If your literature review feels long but flat, it could be that you've not climbed high enough up the ladder yet. A helpful way to spot this is to imagine your literature review as a dinner party. Description is introducing each guest one by one. Criticality is about showing who agrees, who disagrees, and which conversations are missing from the party altogether. So have a think about this in relation to your own literature review. And if it feels a bit underdeveloped, it might be because everybody has been introduced, but they're not talking to each other. Next up, the methodology. Now, criticality in the methodology chapter is not about apologising for the way you've done your study or tearing your decision making to pieces. It is about justifying your choices, acknowledging your limitations, and explaining why the approach that you took to the research, to the study, was the very best one that you could have taken. For example, instead of just saying the study used interviews, you could say interviews were chosen because they allowed for in-depth exploration of participants' experiences, which aligns with the aims of this study, which were two. So you're not saying that your method is perfect here. You're showing that it was thoughtfully chosen for the questions you were asking. In the findings chapter, criticality is usually a bit lighter than it is in the other chapters, because primarily this chapter is about showing your data. It's about showing what you found. But interpretation still matters. Why patterns are significant, what's surprising, what needs explaining later. You're laying the ground for deeper, more critical work in the discussion chapter. Next, let's take a look at how you can be more critical in that chapter, the discussion chapter. The discussion chapter. And this is where all of the rungs of that ladder are very hard at work. You interpret the findings, you evaluate them in relation to the literature, you synthesize across ideas, and you position your own contribution. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this chapter. And this is why the discussion chapter often feels the hardest, because all of those rungs are being trodden on at once. All of those plates are being spun at once. So think of the discussion chapter as the point in your thesis where everything finally starts talking to everything else. It's one noisy party in there. Your data is speaking, the literature is responding, you're in the middle trying to make sense of it all. And that weaving together of all of those ideas and all of that evidence, that's criticality in action. So, in summary, being critical is about making your reasoning explicit. And that takes time and patience. Appearing on your screen right now is another video about critical analysis that you might find helpful if you enjoyed this one. I have a lot of videos about critical analysis, so I'll link to some more of them in the description. So go and check those out. I'll see you in there.